Welcome to Radiant Wisdom. Here we share stories and reflections that nourish the soul, helping you find clarity and peace in life's quiet moments and turning points. In a world that often pulls us in many directions, work deadlines, family responsibilities, personal goals, it's easy to feel overwhelmed and unsure. We find ourselves pausing, sometimes for too long, at the crossroads of decisions that shape our lives. These pauses can be necessary, a way to breathe and reflect. But what happens when those pauses turn into hesitation, self-doubt, and fear? What happens when we become stuck between the past and the future, afraid to move forward? Today's reflection is about those very moments of indecision. It's for anyone who has ever stood at the edge of a choice, uncertain, questioning, hoping for a sign that the path they choose will lead somewhere safe, somewhere meaningful. But here's the truth, we rarely get that sign. Life doesn't come with a glowing map that points out the way with certainty. And yet, even in the absence of guarantees, the way forward calls to us. Often, it isn't the path itself that's the problem, it's our fear of the unknown. The real journey is learning how to quiet that fear, to embrace uncertainty, and to trust in our own ability to navigate what comes next. This is where so many of us falter. We hesitate because we want to avoid mistakes. We want to be sure that every step we take will lead to success or happiness. But in that hesitation, something deeper is at risk. Not just time, but the very chance to grow. Let's explore this together with an open heart and mind. We'll begin with a story about devotion, temptation, and the weight of indecision. It's a story that invites us to reflect on our choices, not as opportunities for perfection, but as opportunities for courage and wisdom. And as we move through this story, I invite you to reflect on your own life. Are there choices you've been holding off on? Paths you've hesitated to walk, waiting for the perfect moment that never seems to come? Let's remind ourselves that even imperfect steps forward are worth taking. This resonates with you, I encourage you to stay present with me today. Feel free to share your own reflections in the comments after the video. What decisions have you struggled with? What has helped you find peace amid uncertainty? Your story may inspire others who are also navigating life's difficult choices. And if you find comfort in these reflections, please like, share, and subscribe so that we can continue building this community of kindred spirits. You never know who might need to hear today's message. The friend who feels stuck, the colleague balancing too much, or even the stranger searching for direction. Now let's take a deep breath together. Inhale slowly and exhale. Allow yourself to be fully present in this moment. Here and now, there's nothing else you need to do but listen and reflect. This is your space to pause, to find peace, and to remember that life isn't about avoiding mistakes. It's about moving forward with grace, one step at a time. With that, let's begin today's journey, a reflection on choosing our path and letting go of the fears that hold us back. The nature of doubt. Doubt is one of the most persistent forces in our lives. It whispers to us in moments of quiet and grows louder in moments of uncertainty. It often disguises itself as caution or rationality, urging us to pause, to consider every possible outcome, and to avoid mistakes at all costs. But beneath this guise, doubt is fueled by fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of stepping into the unknown. We all encounter doubt in different ways. Maybe it's a career change that excites you but also terrifies you. Maybe it's a relationship where you question if you're making the right commitment or walking away too soon. Or perhaps it's the simple yet profound uncertainty of wondering if you're living your life in alignment with your deeper purpose. Whatever form it takes, doubt often stems from the same source, the need for certainty. We crave reassurance that our choices will lead to something good, that the path ahead is safe, predictable, and fulfilling. But life doesn't work that way. We don't get a guarantee. Instead, we're given choices, each one an invitation to trust not the path, but ourselves. Yet, this is where many of us falter. Doubt traps us in a loop of what-ifs. What if I make the wrong choice? What if I can't handle the consequences? What if I miss out on something better? Instead of making a decision and moving forward, we hesitate. We stand at the crossroads, paralyzed by the fear of regret. And the longer we hesitate, the more the crossroads begins to feel like a prison, a place where time stands still, where opportunities slip away unnoticed. In our attempt to avoid the pain of failure, we unknowingly choose the pain of inaction. The paradox of doubt is that it promises to protect us, but it often does the opposite. It drains our energy, steals our time, and erodes our confidence. It convinces us that staying in place is safer than taking a step into the unknown. But the truth is, the longer we stay in that place of indecision, the more disconnected we become from our inner strength and intuition. Doubt tells us that we are powerless, incapable of handling whatever comes next. But that's a lie. When we view doubt through a Buddhist lens, we begin to understand that it isn't something to be feared or suppressed. It's something to be observed and understood. Doubt arises from our attachment to certainty, our longing for control in a world that is inherently uncertain. But life's beauty and wisdom often emerge not from control, but from surrender. Consider the story of 2D, the dog who was caught between loyalty and temptation. The scent of stir-fried meat awakened something primal in him, a desire that was hard to resist. Yet he also felt the pull of his devotion to the monk. In the middle of the river, he was torn between two forces, his instincts and his commitment. And in that moment of indecision, he became trapped in a liminal space where he could neither fully choose one path nor let go of the other. This is the nature of doubt. It creates an inner war, a tug-of-war between heart and mind, fear and faith, desire and duty. And in this war, we lose our clarity. The longer we resist making a choice, the more exhausted we become, until we risk being swept away by the current of life itself. But doubt doesn't have to be our enemy. In fact, it can be a teacher. It invites us to examine our fears and motivations. Why do we hesitate? Are we afraid of losing something familiar? Are we seeking perfection, afraid that anything less will lead to disappointment? Or are we struggling to trust our own wisdom, believing that others know better than we do? When we slow down and observe doubt with curiosity rather than judgment, we begin to see its roots. We recognize that doubt isn't a reflection of our inadequacy, it's a reflection of our humanity. It shows up when we're standing at the edge of growth, reminding us that we're stepping into something meaningful. The key is not to eliminate doubt, but to learn how to coexist with it without letting it control us. Instead of waiting for certainty, we can choose courage. Instead of seeking perfection, we can choose presence. Instead of fearing mistakes, we can choose to see them as stepping stones. In moments of doubt, remind yourself, the path doesn't need to be flawless for you to walk it. You don't need to have everything figured out before you take that first step. Trust that you will learn and adapt as you go. Even if you stumble, even if you fall, you will rise stronger because you dared to move. Doubt, like the river in the story of 2D, will always flow through our lives. But we have the choice to cross it, to keep moving forward rather than standing still. The current may feel strong, but within you is a deeper strength, a quiet resilience that doubt cannot shake. As we continue on this journey, let this be your reminder. Life is lived not in the certainty of the destination, but in the courage to walk the path. Let doubt be a sign that you're stepping into something meaningful. And when the whisper of "what if" arises, answer it with your own quiet, steady resolve. I may not know what lies ahead, but I am brave enough to find out. The Tale of 2D the Dog. Let me share with you the story of 2D. tale that captures the subtle and powerful battle we all face when torn between two opposing forces, our higher aspirations and our fleeting desires. There was once a compassionate monk who lived a simple, peaceful life in a small monastery nestled by a flowing river. One day, while walking along the roadside, the monk saw a wounded dog lying helplessly in the dust. The dog's body was frail, its fur matted with mud and blood. Its eyes, though filled with pain, still held a glimmer of life. The monk knelt beside the dog and whispered softly, "You have suffered enough. Come with me, and I will help you heal." With great care, the monk carried the dog back to the monastery, cleaned its wounds, and fed it with what little he had. In time, the dog recovered and grew strong under the monk's gentle care. Moved by the dog's resilience and loyalty, the monk named it 2D, meaning devotion. To the monk, 2D was more than just a companion. It was a living symbol of dedication, mindfulness, and the possibility of transformation. Day after day, 2D followed the monk faithfully. When the monk meditated under the shade of the banyan tree, 2D would curl up beside him, resting quietly as if sharing in the stillness. When the monk ventured to the nearby village to teach and serve, 2D walked beside him, never straying far. Wherever the monk went, 2D was always by his side, a picture of loyalty and devotion. But life, as it often does, has a way of testing even the most steadfast hearts. One warm afternoon, while the monk was deep in meditation, the enticing aroma of stir-fried meat drifted through the air. The smell was rich and savory, a reminder of the life 2D had known before the monastery, a life shaped by hunger, instincts, and survival. 2D lifted its head, its nose twitching with curiosity. A wave of longing surged through its body, pulling it toward the scent. Yet something within it hesitated. 2D remembered the peace it had found at the monastery, the safety, the love, the quiet moments spent in the monk's presence. The dog wrestled with its urges. "It's just a scent," 2D thought. "I can resist this." But the aroma grew stronger, wrapping itself around 2D like a spell. The more the dog tried to stay still, the more restless it became. It shifted and stretched, unable to shake the desire. Eventually, the temptation became unbearable. With a sudden burst of energy, 2D sprang to its feet and began to walk toward the river, where the smell seemed to originate. The monk, sensing the disturbance, opened his eyes and saw 2D approaching the riverbank. He stood and called out gently, "2D, don't cross the river. Stay here. This is where you belong. It's safe here." 2D stopped for a moment, the sound of the monk's voice pulling it back from the edge. It turned and looked at the monk, ears perked, as if torn between two worlds. But the scent, oh, the scent. It was so close now. It spoke to an older part of 2D, one that remembered hunger and instinct more than peace and stillness. The dog's longing for that forgotten pleasure was too strong to resist. With one last glance at the monk, 2D turned away and waded into the river, determined to see what lay on the other side. The monk's voice grew louder, more urgent. "2D, come back! The river is dangerous. You've already found your peace here. Don't give it up for something uncertain." 2D hesitated again, its heart and mind waging a war. It remembered the monk's kindness, the days spent in calm serenity. But it also felt the pull of curiosity and desire. Unable to make a final choice, the dog began to pace back and forth in the river, unsure whether to continue or return. But the river was swift, and indecision is costly in moments like this. As 2D struggled between two worlds, the current grew stronger, pulling at its legs. Its strength began to wane. With no clear path forward or backward, the dog grew weaker until, overwhelmed and exhausted, it was swept away by the river's force. The monk watched helplessly as the river carried 2D away, his heart heavy with sorrow. This story may seem tragic, but it's more than a tale of loss. It's a reflection of the human experience. Like 2D, we all have moments when we are caught between two opposing forces. We feel the pull of our instincts, desires, and fears, while also hearing the quiet voice of wisdom and peace within us. When we hesitate too long, unable to fully commit to either direction, we find ourselves trapped in the middle, drifting, unsure, and eventually worn down by the indecision itself. The tragedy of 2D was not in its decision to follow its desire, but in its inability to make a clear choice. The monk's warnings, though well-meaning, were rooted in his own fears and assumptions. Perhaps the other side of the river wasn't as dangerous as the monk believed. Perhaps 2D could have crossed safely if it had been resolute. But by wavering between loyalty and desire, 2D lost its footing entirely. This story reminds us that life's rivers must be crossed with clarity and courage. It's not the nature of the choice itself that determines our fate. It's our commitment to that choice. Whether we stay or go, succeed or stumble, the true danger lies not in choosing wrongly, but in failing to choose at all. As we move forward in this reflection, let this story be a reminder. Hesitation drains our energy, while action, even imperfect action, creates momentum. The river of life will always flow, and if we wait too long, the current may sweep us away. Choose your path. Walk it with faith, and trust in your ability to meet whatever lies ahead. The meaning behind the story. The tale of 2D is more than just a story about a dog caught between devotion and desire. It's a profound reflection of the human condition. At its heart, it's a story about choice, hesitation, and the consequences of indecision. In 2D's struggle, we see ourselves. How often do we find ourselves standing at a crossroads, pulled in two directions? One path represents comfort, loyalty, and the familiar. The other path is alluring, promising excitement, fulfillment, or a chance to experience something we've longed for but feared. In those moments, we become like 2D, torn between what we know is safe and what we imagine might bring us happiness. But the deeper meaning of 2D's story isn't found in whether its choice was right or wrong. It lies in how indecision itself can become our downfall. The river in the story represents life, the relentless flow of time and circumstance. We don't control the river's current. It moves with or without us. But when we waver in the middle, unsure whether to move forward or retreat, we risk losing our footing altogether. The weight of indecision. The tragedy of 2D wasn't that it desired the stir-fried meat. It was that the dog lingered too long in hesitation. Instead of choosing with clarity and committing to its decision, it remained trapped between its instincts and its sense of loyalty. As the monk called out from the shore, 2D grew more confused, torn between two opposing forces. In the end, the dog wasn't defeated by the river. It was defeated by its own inability to choose. This is a common struggle for many of us. When we hesitate too long, life doesn't wait. The opportunities before us may pass. The people we love may drift away. The chance to grow may fade. Sometimes, the greatest loss isn't making the wrong choice. It's failing to make a choice at all. Indecision drains us, both mentally and emotionally. We lose energy, clarity, and confidence. The longer we delay, the more overwhelmed we become. Our fear of regret can become so paralyzing that we don't realize the regret of inaction is even heavier. The nature of choice and consequence. One of the core lessons from 2D's story is that no choice is without consequence. Whether we act or stay still, life continues to move forward. By refusing to choose, we may think we're avoiding discomfort, but we're actually making a decision by default. And often, that default choice leaves us feeling powerless. It's important to remember that no choice guarantees perfection. There is no flawless path. Even when we choose with confidence, life may surprise us. But here's the beauty of it. Making a choice, even when uncertain, allows us to learn, adapt, and grow. The journey itself holds the lessons that help us navigate future challenges with more resilience. Consider this. If 2D had committed fully to crossing the river, it might have discovered strength and clarity it didn't know it had. And if it had chosen to stay, it could have deepened its sense of peace and loyalty. The issue wasn't in the choice, it was in the hesitation. The monk's perspective, fear and protection. The monk in the story, though wise, was also acting out of fear. His warnings to 2D came from his love and concern, but they were also shaped by his assumptions. He believed the river was dangerous because of 2D's past injuries, but that belief wasn't necessarily the truth. How often do we let the fears of others influence our decisions? The people around us, family, friends, mentors, may advise us out of love and care, but their guidance, however well-intentioned, comes from their own experiences and limitations. Sometimes their fears are not our fears. Their warnings, while meaningful, may not reflect the reality of our potential. This doesn't mean we should ignore advice, but rather that we must balance external voices with our internal wisdom. Only we can fully understand the longings and strengths that guide us. Surrendering to the flow of life. Another key takeaway from this story is the importance of surrender, not to fear or indecision, but to the flow of life itself. The river in the story is a metaphor for life's constant movement. It reminds us that certainty is an illusion. We can't predict every twist and turn, but we can trust ourselves to move with the current rather than resist it. In Buddhist teachings, surrender doesn't mean giving up. It means accepting what is beyond our control and finding peace in the present moment. When we stop demanding certainty and start trusting our ability to navigate the unknown, we free ourselves from the burden of hesitation, learning to choose with courage. The story of 2D teaches us that every choice holds the potential for growth. Whether we succeed or stumble, each step we take adds to our understanding of who we are. Even mistakes can become valuable lessons if we approach them with mindfulness and humility. The real danger isn't in choosing the wrong path. It's in standing still, trapped by fear and indecision. Life's flow is constant, and our time is finite. When we resist the flow, we risk being swept away by our own inaction. But when we choose to move, even with uncertainty, we begin to discover the depths of our inner strength. Final reflection. When you find yourself at a crossroads, remember 2D. The story isn't meant to make you fear indecision, it's meant to remind you of your power to choose. Life doesn't require you to have every answer, nor does it promise safety in every step, but it invites you to walk your path with presence and courage. When doubt whispers, "What if I fail?" respond with, "What if I grow?" When fear says, "Wait until you're ready," remind yourself that readiness often comes after action, not before. The river of life flows, and its current is strong, but so are you. Choose your path and trust that whatever lies ahead, you have the strength to cross to the other side. The fear of making mistakes. If there's one fear that binds us all, it's the fear of making mistakes. It creeps in quietly, whispering warnings of regret and failure. It tells us that every wrong move could lead to disaster, embarrassment, or loss. This fear is so powerful that it often stops us before we even begin. We hesitate, we second guess, and sometimes we convince ourselves that doing nothing at all is safer than risking a misstep. But in truth, the fear of making mistakes isn't protecting us, it's imprisoning us. It keeps us from pursuing our passions, speaking our truths, and embracing opportunities that could change our lives. Instead of stepping boldly into the unknown, we shrink back, hoping to avoid the sting of failure. Yet, life has its own way of teaching us that mistakes aren't the end of the journey, they're part of it. In fact, some of life's greatest lessons come from the very moments we're trying so desperately to avoid. Mistakes humble us, refine us, and if we allow them, make us stronger and wiser. Why do we fear mistakes so deeply? At its core, the fear of making mistakes is often rooted in two things: our need for control and our fear of judgment. 1. The need for control. We long to control the outcomes of our choices. We want reassurance that if we make a decision, everything will turn out exactly as we hoped. But life rarely offers that kind of certainty. No matter how much we plan, unexpected challenges will arise. And when we place all our energy into trying to predict and control the future, we set ourselves up for frustration and disappointment. 2. Fear of judgment. Many of us worry not just about the consequences of a mistake, but about how others will perceive us if we fail. We fear being seen as incompetent, reckless, or foolish. This fear of external judgment can be so overwhelming that we become paralyzed, unwilling to risk vulnerability in front of others. But the truth is, most people are too preoccupied with their own lives to scrutinize our missteps as closely as we imagine. And even if they do notice, their opinions don't define our worth. The value of our journey isn't determined by the number of times we stumble, but by the courage we show in standing back up. The illusion of perfection. One of the biggest traps we fall into is the pursuit of perfection. We tell ourselves that we must make the perfect choice to avoid failure altogether. But perfection is an illusion. It doesn't exist. No choice is ever without risk, and no path is entirely free of obstacles. In the story of 2D, the dog was paralyzed by the fear of making the wrong choice. It wanted both the comfort of loyalty and the thrill of satisfying its desire. But in trying to avoid the discomfort of sacrifice, 2D lost everything. The lesson here is clear. Life often asks us to choose, knowing that no choice is perfect, but every choice holds meaning. Mistakes don't define us. What defines us is how we respond to them. Do we let them defeat us, or do we use them as stepping stones for growth? Reframing mistakes as opportunities. Buddhist teachings remind us to approach life with curiosity and compassion, especially toward ourselves. When we make a mistake, instead of reacting with self-criticism, we can choose to observe the mistake as a moment of learning. Think of a child learning to walk. When the child falls, we don't criticize them, we encourage them to try again. Why? Because we know that falling is part of the process. In the same way, when we stumble in life, it's not a sign that we're failing, it's a sign that we're growing. Mistakes teach us resilience. When we fall and get back up, we build inner strength. Humility. Mistakes remind us that we are human, imperfect, and beautifully so. Perspective. Failure often clarifies what truly matters. When something doesn't go as planned, we're forced to reevaluate our goals and refine our understanding of success. In fact, some of life's most profound successes are born from initial failure. History is filled with stories of inventors, leaders, and creators who failed many times before they achieved their breakthroughs. They didn't succeed because they avoided mistakes. They succeeded because they refused to be defined by them. What happens when we don't take risks? Perhaps an even greater tragedy than making mistakes is living a life so guarded that we never take meaningful risks. When we prioritize safety and certainty above all else, we miss out on the richness of life. We stay in familiar but unfulfilling places, jobs that don't inspire us, relationships that no longer serve us, because the thought of change feels too uncertain. But consider this: when we look back on our lives, we're often more haunted by the things we didn't do than by the mistakes we made. The missed opportunities, the untaken chances, the moments when we let fear make the choice for us. These can leave deeper regrets than any failure ever could. Courage in the face of uncertainty. The story of today reminds us that life will present us with rivers to cross. Some rivers will be challenging and some will be dangerous, but we can't spend our lives pacing at the river's edge, waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect choice. The river will keep flowing whether we step forward or not. To live fully is to embrace uncertainty. It's to understand that mistakes are inevitable, but they're also valuable. Each mistake is a chapter in our story, a reminder that we dared to live rather than simply exist. When fear of failure whispers, "What if you fall?" respond, "What if I fly?" When doubt says, "Wait until you're ready," remind yourself that readiness often comes after action, not before. Final thoughts. The fear of making mistakes is part of being human, but it doesn't have to control us. The key is to shift our mindset from perfection to progress, from fear to faith in our resilience. Every step forward, even the messy ones, is a step toward growth. So when life places you at the edge of a choice, take a deep breath. Remind yourself that the goal isn't to avoid mistakes, it's to move forward with courage and grace. Whatever happens next, you will learn, you will grow, and you will rise. As the river flows, so must we. And in every stumble, there is the quiet promise of something greater. A life lived fully, mistakes and all. Letting go of the need for certainty. If there is one thing most of us crave in life, it's certainty. We long for assurances that the decisions we make will lead us to safety, success, and happiness. We want to know that the people we trust will never let us down, that the career we choose will bring fulfillment, and that the love we give will be returned. This longing for certainty can feel like a form of self-protection, a way to shield ourselves from disappointment and failure. But certainty is an illusion. Life by its very nature is unpredictable. Seasons change, people grow, circumstances shift, and no matter how tightly we cling to the need to know what's ahead, life often has other plans. The more we resist this truth, the more trapped we become in fear and hesitation, endlessly analyzing and second-guessing every decision in search of guarantees that don't exist. When we demand certainty before taking action, we imprison ourselves in inaction. We tell ourselves, "I'll start when I'm sure." But that moment of absolute certainty rarely arrives. The truth is, we don't need certainty to move forward. We need courage to embrace the unknown. The cost of needing certainty. The desire for certainty can cost us more than we realize. It can cause us to miss out on opportunities for growth, love, and discovery. We may spend years stuck in unfulfilling jobs, stagnant relationships, or repetitive routines because they feel safe or predictable. But what are we truly gaining if, deep down, we feel uninspired and restless? Think of all the adventures and transformations that never begin because someone is waiting for the right time or the perfect moment. How many dreams have been deferred, not because they were impossible, but because someone was too afraid to step forward without knowing how things would end? In the story of 2D, the dog was paralyzed by uncertainty. It wanted reassurance that crossing the river would be worth it, but there was none. The monk, in his love for 2D, called it back out of fear that something bad would happen. But life doesn't always offer us the comfort of knowing how things will turn out. And when 2D hesitated, trapped between two choices, it lost its strength and was swept away. The lesson is clear. The longer we wait for certainty, the more we risk losing ourselves in the process. The need for certainty robs us of the ability to live fully in the present. Why do we crave certainty? Craving certainty is deeply human. It stems from our survival instincts. Our brains are wired to avoid danger and seek comfort. But in modern life, where physical threats are far less common, this instinct can work against us. Instead of protecting us, it keeps us small. We may also seek certainty as a way to avoid vulnerability. Making a choice without knowing the outcome feels risky. It exposes us to the possibility of failure, rejection, or disappointment. But vulnerability is not a weakness. It's the birthplace of courage, creativity, and connection. When we cling to certainty, we rob ourselves of these gifts. We may feel safe, but we also feel stuck. True freedom comes not from controlling every outcome, but from learning to trust ourselves, even when the future is uncertain. Surrendering to the flow of life. In Buddhist philosophy, surrender doesn't mean giving up. It means accepting reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. Life is like a river. It flows with or without our consent. When we try to control the flow, we exhaust ourselves. But when we surrender to it, we find peace. Surrendering to life's uncertainty doesn't mean we stop making plans or striving for goals. It means we acknowledge that we cannot predict or control every twist and turn. We can prepare and act mindfully, but we must also let go of the belief that certainty is a prerequisite for action. When we embrace uncertainty, we free ourselves from the pressure of having to get it right all the time. We begin to see that life isn't a pass or fail test. It's an unfolding journey of discovery. Finding trust in uncertainty. Letting go of certainty requires a shift in mindset. Instead of asking, "Will this work out perfectly?" ask yourself, "Can I handle whatever happens next?" The answer is often yes. When you trust yourself to adapt, to grow, and to learn from whatever comes your way, the need for certainty diminishes. You begin to realize that you don't have to predict the future. You only need to meet the present moment with openness and resilience. In every choice, there will be unknowns. There will be surprises, both good and bad. But in the end, it's not about avoiding every challenge. It's about building the confidence to say, "No matter what happens, I will be okay." Practical ways to embrace uncertainty. Here are a few ways to start releasing your grip on the need for certainty. 1. Focus on the process, not the outcome. When you take on a new project, pursue a dream, or make a difficult decision, remind yourself that the experience itself is valuable, regardless of the result. Whether you succeed or stumble, you'll gain insights and growth along the way. 2. Practice mindfulness. Mindfulness helps us stay present rather than getting lost in what-ifs. When you find yourself spiraling into worry, pause, take a deep breath, ground yourself, and bring your awareness back to the present moment. 3. Take small steps. If fear of uncertainty feels overwhelming, break your journey into smaller, manageable steps. You don't need to see the whole path, just the next step in front of you. 4. Reframe failure. Instead of seeing mistakes as proof of failure, view them as valuable lessons. Remind yourself that every misstep is an opportunity to refine your path and grow stronger. Embracing the mystery of life. Life's most beautiful moments often come from unexpected places. Chance encounters, unforeseen opportunities, surprising acts of kindness. If everything were mapped out in advance, we would miss the magic of serendipity and the joy of discovery. Letting go of the need for certainty doesn't mean giving up control. It means reclaiming your freedom. It means living with a sense of wonder, knowing that life will unfold in ways you can't always predict but can always learn from. When doubt and fear arise, remember that the river of life will flow whether you step forward or not. But stepping forward, even when you can't see what's ahead, is an act of trust, not in certainty, but in yourself. Trust that whatever happens, you'll find your way. Trust that the path will reveal itself step by step, and most importantly, trust that even when life is uncertain, you are strong enough to meet it with grace and courage. In the end, it's not about finding guarantees, it's about embracing the journey, imperfections and all. And when you let go of the need for certainty, you open yourself to something even more powerful, the freedom to live fully and authentically, unburdened by fear. Step into the unknown. You may be surprised at the strength and beauty you discover within yourself. The beauty of imperfect journeys. We often look at life as if it were a straight path leading to a specific destination: success, love, happiness, or fulfillment. We imagine that if we make the right choices and avoid mistakes, we'll arrive at our goals unscathed, victorious, and complete. But the truth is, life rarely unfolds that way. The path is rarely straight, and the journey is almost never perfect. And yet, it's within this imperfection that life's deepest beauty is revealed. The story of 2D, the dog, reminds us that the journey itself matters more than the outcome. Although 2D's story ends tragically, it serves as a mirror for our own struggles and choices. Sometimes, despite our best intentions, things don't turn out the way we hoped. Yet every step, even the missteps, teaches us something valuable about who we are and who we're becoming. The idea of an imperfect journey can feel unsettling. We've been conditioned to believe that we must constantly strive for flawlessness, that if our path is filled with detours, mistakes, or failures, we've somehow fallen short. But in reality, the twists and turns of the journey are not obstacles to our growth. They are the growth. The myth of the perfect life. In modern culture, especially in a world of carefully curated social media feeds, we're often fed the illusion of perfect lives. We see images of people who seem to have it all: careers that thrive, relationships that flourish, and dreams that come true without struggle. This illusion can make us feel like our own lives, with their messiness and setbacks, don't measure up. But perfection is a myth. No one's journey is without difficulty. Every person we admire, whether they're creators, leaders, or everyday heroes, has faced moments of uncertainty, failure, and heartbreak. The difference isn't that they avoided imperfection, it's that they embraced it as part of their story. Imperfect journeys lead to discovery. Think about the greatest moments in your life. Were they perfectly planned, or did they happen unexpectedly? Was it the meticulously mapped out plans that changed you the most, or the unforeseen detours that forced you to grow? Often the moments we remember most aren't the ones where everything went smoothly. They're the moments when things fell apart and we found strength we didn't know we had. It's the heartbreak that taught us resilience, the failure that opened a new door, and the loss that deepened our capacity for compassion. In 2D's journey, we see the tragedy of indecision. But within that story lies an invitation to accept that journeys don't need to be perfect to be meaningful. We don't need to know every answer before we take a step. Even when we stray from the ideal path, we're still moving forward in ways we can't always see in the moment. The wisdom found in mistakes. Mistakes often get a bad reputation. They're seen as failures, setbacks, or signs of weakness. But mistakes are some of life's greatest teachers. When we make a wrong turn, we gain insights we wouldn't have discovered otherwise. We learn humility, adaptability, and patience. Consider the story of 2D not as a cautionary tale, but as a reminder of how uncertainty and desire shape us. If 2D had made a firm decision, whether to stay or cross the river, it would have experienced a different outcome. But even in its hesitation, we see our own humanity reflected. We are not defined by the fact that we face doubts and temptations. What defines us is how we respond to them and what we learn when we falter. The imperfections of our journeys invite us to cultivate self-compassion. Instead of punishing ourselves for every mistake, we can learn to see our missteps as moments of growth. We don't need to have everything figured out to move forward. We only need the willingness to keep going, even when the path feels unclear. Finding purpose in the journey, not just the destination. The problem with focusing too much on the destination is that we miss the richness of the present moment. When we obsess over where we're trying to go, we lose sight of where we are. But the truth is, the journey is the destination. Every day holds small, meaningful experiences that shape who we are becoming. The conversation that softens your heart, the unexpected challenge that tests your patience, the quiet moment of reflection that sparks an insight. All of these are the essence of life. They don't have to be grand or perfect to matter. When we accept that our journeys will be imperfect, we also free ourselves to live more fully. We stop waiting for everything to be just right before we can feel joy, peace, or contentment. We begin to understand that we can experience meaning in the here and now, even when things are messy or unfinished. The courage to keep walking. Letting go of the need for a perfect journey takes courage. It requires us to step into the unknown, knowing that there will be times when we lose our way. But when we do, we also open ourselves to the unexpected beauty of life. It's in the moments of uncertainty that we discover our resilience. It's in the moments of failure that we find humility, and it's in the moments of loss that we learn how deeply we can love and how much we can endure. The story of 2D reminds us that life doesn't guarantee smooth crossings or perfect outcomes, but it does offer us something even more profound: the chance to walk our paths with openness, grace, and the courage to begin again. Final reflection. There is a Buddhist saying that goes, "The path is not in the sky, the path is in the heart." This reminds us that our journey isn't about reaching some external ideal. It's about how we walk, moment by moment, with mindfulness and compassion. When we stop striving for perfection, we make space for something deeper, presence. We learn to appreciate the moments of beauty, even in the midst of chaos. We learn to embrace our growth, even when it feels slow. And we learn to accept ourselves, not as perfect beings, but as imperfect travelers on an extraordinary journey. So, wherever you are on your path, whether you feel lost, uncertain, or in the middle of a detour, remember that the beauty of your life doesn't come from its perfection. It comes from your willingness to keep moving forward, to learn, and to love, no matter how many times you fall. The journey may be imperfect, but it's yours, and that alone makes it beautiful. In the story of 2D the dog, we are reminded of the delicate dance between fear and faith, between action and hesitation. 2D's fate wasn't sealed by the path it chose, but by its inability to choose at all. This story, though tragic on the surface, holds a profound message. Life isn't meant to be perfect, nor is it meant to be predictable. It is meant to be lived fully and courageously, one imperfect step at a time. Too often we believe that the key to a meaningful life is avoiding mistakes, making all the right decisions, and choosing paths free from risk or pain. But life doesn't work that way. There will always be moments when we're unsure, when we're tempted by the comforts of the past or afraid of the uncertainties ahead. But what truly matters is how we show up for the journey, not with a need for perfection, but with openness, resilience, and a willingness to grow. At the heart of this reflection is a reminder that we must trust ourselves even when the outcome is unclear. The need for certainty can paralyze us, making us miss out on experiences that could shape us in beautiful ways. Instead of waiting for everything to be just right, we must learn to step forward, trusting that the path will reveal itself as we walk it. When faced with difficult choices, it's normal to feel fear. But fear is not a signal to stop. It's an invitation to be brave. When doubt whispers that you might fall, remind yourself that even falling is part of learning to stand. When uncertainty tells you to wait until you're ready, remember that readiness often comes not before action, but because of it. The beauty of your life is not measured by how flawless your path is, but by how deeply you live it. It's found in the quiet moments when you take a breath and choose to move forward despite your fears. It's found in the way you learn to make peace with your missteps and transform them into wisdom. It's found in the resilience you build every time you rise after falling. So, as you continue your journey, ask yourself not, is this path perfect, but am I present? Am I walking with integrity and courage? The greatest gift you can give yourself is the permission to live fully, mistakes, setbacks, and all. At the end of the day, we won't remember life by how perfectly we avoided failure or by the choices we overanalyzed. We'll remember life by the moments when we dared to love, to dream, to take a chance, and to try again when things didn't go as planned. The real tragedy isn't in making a wrong turn. It's in standing still, too afraid to begin. The story of 2D teaches us that life's rivers must be crossed, even if we can't see the other side clearly. Whether the current is calm or strong, the only way to grow is to trust in our strength and walk our path wholeheartedly. Thank you for joining me today on Radiant Wisdom. If this story spoke to you, I invite you to reflect and share your thoughts in the comments below. How do you handle moments of doubt? How do you remind yourself to trust your journey? Your reflections may inspire someone else who feels stuck at their own crossroads. If you found this reflection meaningful, please like, share, and subscribe. Every interaction helps us build a community of mindful seekers. And remember, no journey is perfect, but every step you take, even the messy ones, brings you closer to the life you're meant to live. So, take a breath, trust your heart, and take that step forward. The journey may be uncertain, but your strength will guide you. Until next time, walk with peace and courage.